Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here. My voice, excuse me, a little raspy. I just came out of almost laryngitis. So a chaplain without a voice is like a policeman without a donut, a doctor without a pill. You can keep on going on a list or whatever it may be, but I've got a little bit of a little hoarse, but I'm okay and everything. So thank you so much for inviting me and my wife to be here to speak with you today. It's been a great honor. We know, as Chaplain Helms knows, any day of the Pentagon's a great day. So I don't care where I am, it's a great day, but especially here, makes it even better. And I'm very honored to be here. I'd like to take a moment just for a second here to look out across the faces here in front of me and identify a lot of the spouses here today. And I just want to make a note right now to say to you personally, I want to thank you for the strength you bring to your husbands, the strength you bring to your families, and the care and love you bring to your families. And I want to thank you for what you do in helping the resiliency of your family and also the sacrifices of seeing those that you love have to go other places and do other things, but you hold fast to the front and keep them strong. So I want to thank you today, personally, for what you do. You're always forgotten many times, taken for granted, way much for granted. And I want to thank you for that. I want to thank the Latter-day Saints Church up front. And I want to thank you for one thing you do, and that's to bring us the best chaplains we ever had, and to bring us such great, capable people to bring the Word of God to those who are throughout the world in very hard places. I want to thank you for the sacrifices you do and for your recruiting of those great and teaching of those great people and everything you do. Now, I'm told that I'm supposed to speak to you, and I'm told you're supposed to listen to me. So if you finish your part before I finish my part, we'll have an early break. Is that a great deal? It's a great deal. So 3 B's apply. Be brief, be brilliant, and be gone. The first and last I can count on. The middle, it'll be up in the air. So we'll see how that goes. 32 years plus and going as a chaplain. Came in 1977. I don't even want to ask where you were in 1977. That made me feel really bad. But in 1977 began the journey. Came on active duty in 1982, as the bio says, but I just want to make a point here to you today. In 1982, when I began the ministry as a chaplain, my wife and I began the first journey piece to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to jump out of perfectly good airplanes, as they say. And the joke is in the Army, no, I jumped out of Air Force airplanes. There's a difference. But anyway, that's another story. A little competition there. A little competition. We began that journey, and we came in for 3 years. Is all we wanted to sign up for to be a chaplain for 3 years. Do my part, follow my dad's guidance and his legacy of loving his country, the defense of his country, and a World War II veteran. My father-in-law, who was a Army Air Corps bombardier in World War II. Pardon me. And so the journey began from that 3-year period. And somehow, in the midst of all that, in that 3 years, it was a hard 3 years. I had some very difficult supervisory chaplains who were hard to get along with, and I found out I wasn't alone in that thought process. So I asked God about, is this where you really want me to be? So we decided to get out in our 3-year moment of serving. And some chaplains stepped in, saw some potential possibly in me, and so they said, would you stay in a little longer? We began our first tour overseas in Germany after that. And somehow along the way, in that journey, we fell in love with the military, with the military families, with the military people. It was a culture that we went into, then all of a sudden it resonated in our hearts and our lives, our very souls, to care for these kind of people. Since 1982, it has changed dramatically, since 1982. I have seen that as time has gone on, that the military, our nation, even in that sense, has changed. Different presidents have come along. Our culture has changed. Our values have changed in a lot of ways. How we communicate, the technology advancement has gotten so powerful and keeps on going. Every day is a new iPod or iPad or something or other that's mentioned on the TV I never heard of, in a sense. I got a brand new phone as of last week. I'm still sticking my thumb on it and doing weird things to it. I can't figure it out yet. It's still a complicated world. Things are changing so quickly. But since 1982, I've had 4 combat tours. I've gone to different places in the world, not just in Afghanistan or Iraq, but other places as well. We're positioning ourselves today to go other places now within the Pacific Rim, to go to other combat operations, because the world is not a safe place. It is a reality. And so we prepare for those kind of things. But in the midst of all that change, in the midst of all that differences, we have some major things that are occurring. And one of those things that's occurring is we're finding out is that as our military people, and I'll talk from a military perspective, a little bit of Army language here, so forgive me, Air Force and Navy and others out there for that, but that's my culture. And as it changes, we're finding out that the application of how I did ministry in 1982 is not the same as I do in 2014. Things have changed. Communication has changed. Our nation has changed. And I'll come to that more in detail in just a second. But there's one thing that's consistent that we all can understand and that we can base our lives on, our ministries on, and that the soul's needs never change. Individuals who come into our military, who are part of our families, or whatever ministries you're in here today, the need of the soul of faith and hope and joy in their life never changes, no matter what. The human element is always the same. The creation of God never changes. And the ministry that God applies in our life to bring that into their lives never changes. Now, what does change and does transform is our mechanisms of how to do it, the timeliness of how to do it, the confrontations, the obstacles, the challenges, the issues have changed to get to that very dire soul need that I've spoken about today. Now, I've asked to speak on the, the challenges of a post-war environment of the military. So I've come up with 7 challenges that I've come up as a universal challenges I want to mention here today and go in discussion about in a sense. But in the midst of all this, I'm getting ready to list to you today that I perceive from my perception of what's challenging our military perspective is based upon our national needs. It's based upon those individuals who come into our ranks, who bring those changes, who bring those differences that's different than my demographical, my generational perception, my theological differences. It is not like we're having people come into our military that's all from great churches, love Jesus, and everyone's happy. It's changed a bit. The rise of atheism, the rise of agnosticism, the rise of just doubts and fears have risen dramatically due to social climate, the cultural change of America. We cannot just come from an individual perception, our individual belief systems, and say this is how it's going to be, and I will do it this way because we've always done it for the last 200 years. You will get what you get. It's like so much Alice in Wonderland story when she came up to the great cat sitting up in a tree. Remember that moment? And she wouldn't know which way to go. He says, well, which way do you want to go? And she said, I'm not really sure. Then he said, well, it really makes no difference which way you go then. And that's pretty much the way we have to think about it as well. You'll always go as far, you'll always do what you need to do in a sense of what meets our needs may not be the need what the people are expecting. And how we deliver that same soul message is different. Now, if I was in your shoes today, first I would shine them, but that's no story. If I was in your shoes today, and I was a brand new chaplain starting out, I will not do it the way I've done it 30 years ago. I cannot say it the way I did it then. Was my generation, my era of how we approached the soul need of faith and hope. It's a different way of communicating. We didn't have iPods. We didn't have computers. And when I started, never mind, I won't go down that road. That's depressing. Anyway, You get the point. The point is a different era. The people who come in our military and our families have a different perception of what family is all about. A different view of what values are, what morals are, what God is all about. Their struggle and their journey is different than ours. The first challenge, I would say, that we're facing from an Army perspective, but it's also all three services in a sense, is that we have a very tired chaplain corps. We have tired chaplains. We are weary. We've had 10 plus years of war. We have gone whenever they asked us to go. We have gone time and time again to Iraq and Afghanistan, to Africa and other places in the world. And we have never turned it down. But the weariness of our military, the weariness of our chaplain corps, the weariness of our chaplains and their families to have to deal with this over and over again is now creating fractures in our midst. Within our perception as our senior leaders, looking across our chaplain corps and our chaplaincies of all services, we perceive that our chaplains and their families are hurting. You are human beings. You have limitations like I do. Your families are in need to have your presence there together, but being separated over and over again has its effects. And that is something we're concerned about, is healing the inside of our chaplains and their families, of healing their spirits, of healing their faith, of healing their time together as a family is critical. Otherwise, we cannot heal the needs of our military without the healing process internally. And that is where the endorsing agencies come in so strong. Of how do we care for our chaplains, how do we bring them back to the point of full health in this sense. The second part is the very stress on the family structure of our military. Now picture this. If I can take a male soldier or seaman or airman or whatever it may be scenario, and that's the uniformed person. And this individual then comes back from a deployment after 6 months, a year, whatever it may be. And they've been separated from their family. They come back in great union moment, and they have this wonderful time. But then they start getting, after a brief time of break, notice that they're going to deploy one more time again. So go back into another cycle of readiness for another deployment. So really, in an emotional and even a physical way, they're halfway gone already again after a short period of time. And then the day comes again, they're back on board the ship, the plane, wherever it may be, and they're gone again for a period of time. This is a cycle that's happened over and over again for this individual and his family. The problem with that is, and we're facing right today, is the family structure is in dysfunctionality in whole. The father does not know how to be a father and a husband. A mother doesn't know how to be a mother and a wife. They reverse the roles in so many ways to just survive as a family unit. And so because of that, they have forgotten how to be that. That's all they know. They got married before they came in the military or after they got in the military, and this is their life. So what is a family unit look like? What's a healthy family supposed to look like as a norm? They don't know. The wife has picked up the husband role and the father role in order to keep the family intact. Or possibly a father-in-law or a father of the wife has stepped in to supplement for the husband in a sense to be a father to the children because he is coming in and out. Then all of a sudden it stops. All of a sudden he's not going anywhere. So what does he do now? How does he pick up the pieces when he doesn't know how? How does she let go of his role to allow him to be the father and husband one more time when he's not really sure what to do anyway, for he doesn't know his own children and so much? That is an issue we're facing. The third one is how do we apply religious care in a military community? Now let me explain what I'm talking about there. Be it garrison or bases, however you want to look at it. We have had chaplains. All they know in ministry for a couple generations now is in a place far away from here. That's where their ministry is taking place. They come back into their community, they get ready to deploy again. So all they know is how to be in a fob, let's say, on the ground somewhere and be a chaplain there. But to come back to a military community inside of the United States is a foreign element. It's a foreign way to do business. Here it is a place in which we have families here with all these needs going on, and all they know how to do is to be in a place by themselves doing ministry to their military personnel, but not the families necessarily. They have learned to be a minister only to the military and not to the military family and military community environment. Now, this is very pointed with inside the Army because we have year-long deployments. We have this constant cycle, even more vicious in our service. And so our young chaplains, I say young compared to me, I guess, for 2 generations now, do not know how to do religious education, do not know how to apply themselves within the homiletical field, do not know how to utilize this with the family structures around them in a holistic sense and the programs they need to do. Their ministry is taken and been shaped by the war and by the environment. And they've done an outstanding job. But now it's a different environment. The one I grew up in as a chaplain was in that environment. So to me, it's not a big deal. It's a norm to me. But to those young chaplains, all they know is war. So how do you become a minister? How do you become a clergy? How do you become a person of care to all the demographics of a military community is a big challenge. The fourth is generational value changes that we're facing. I already mentioned this briefly already, and I'll just say it one more time. The soldiers and the military people that come into our ranks are coming from a different era than we have come from, many of us. We were born and bred, many of us, and are very comfortable within a very established, value-centric, very spiritual, religious roots that are deep within our grain, within our family structure. But you see this, those of you who've been out there working with these military, you see that this is a different breed that's coming in. It's like a resurrection of the 70s and late 60s all over again. It really is. It's like deja vu for me. To you, it's historical. To me, it's reality. But it's these people that are coming in who do not know what is right and wrong anymore. Their heroes are those NFL players who now are beating their wives. That's the heroes who are fallen. It's the actors and actresses out there. That's the values they see on television of what is right and what is wrong. So where are the morals? What's the ethical behavior that's okay? Is it just not getting caught? What does a family structure look like that's whole when a man may know who his father is, and the mother has been married several times, or possibly even a sense where they don't even know who their mother was? This is not an abnorm. This is a norm that's coming into our ranks who are struggling to find out what is right. Where is truth? Where is sacredness in life? Because game shows that we play on our televisions and our Game Boys and whatever else they have out there, Xboxes, whatever, show how old I am, show that you can just die and get back up and go on. And killing's okay. And that's where the values are coming from. So the question is, and challenging to us is, if that's the values, if that's the generational morals, if that's the perception of life and the sacredness of it, and the existence of God in their life, or the search for God of righteousness and a God of strength and a God of forgiveness, if that's the mixed up message, then what's our message should look like? To say the same old thing to them as we've been taught to us, or to package it differently is the question. What will communicate to them? The fifth is a term that was already mentioned briefly, is moral injury. We're finding out in the chaplain corps that the issue, as I just alluded to in the prior comments, is that our young military are dealing with issues they have never dealt with before, and that is the taking of life, the effects of war, and having the guilt and having the reality of what they've done and trying to deal with that guilt and the forgiveness of that guilt and having no basis to fall back on a resiliency and put it in perception of faith. And they're bringing this injury into their life, and it's played out in our suicide rates, our sexual assault rates, our homicidal rates, our family divorce rates are going up, all because of moral injury. It is the soul that has been injured. The soul, the very spirit of the individual who is trying to figure out, what have I done to see these children dead, the families dead, to see the effects of war and the tragedy of wars, to see my buddies die. And they're bringing this back to us as the chaplains and saying, help me figure this out. Help me find out what is right and wrong. How did God let this happen? Moral injury. A doctor can't give you a pill for that. A doctor cannot do this or that with you. It takes it from the inside out of a spirit of God coming in them to give them in some kind of healing in that soul. And the agency to do that is us on behalf of our God. So what's the answer? This is a big, big issue. What's the answer? The sixth is a transforming military. All three services are transforming and changing. Because of all these issues I just named up to this point, because of all this and the new mission of economics that's brought down the ability to have the money we used to have during the war has now declined radically. The congressional dictates, the things that they're doing in regard to trying to get the country healthy again is affecting the military. We have less to work with in a monetary perspective. And they're saying, bring down the military, bring it down to the post-Vietnam era of size. And that's huge. So who goes out? Who stays? Is a dilemma that all three services are wrestling with. In the midst of that, as a side note, what a great ministry opportunity, isn't it? To go to an individual who's been told after 10 years that they must leave the military, what a great moment of ministry to help them transition back into the civilian world, of coming to us to allow us to help them in their injuries and their hurt and pain of losing their job. But on my point here is, as the Army changes, as the Navy changes, the Air Force changes, as our civilian agencies change, as everything is changing around in our country due to all these reasons of a new type of leadership and all these things like this, it caused a dilemma in our religious support aspect of it. It caused us to have to say we have less money to work with. We have less structure to work with. We are under attack. I don't say that in a negative term, because every person is just about, to say you must scale back. So what do we do with our chaplain corps? How do we change? What do we look like along with our military? And the seventh and last is, how do we position our chaplaincies to be more relevant? What should a chaplain look like for the year 2010 to 2025? What should a chaplain assistant, the enlisted side, look like? Educational directors, we have any, look like? Should we have more chaplains, less chaplains? What should be taller, more hair, whatever? What should they have in capabilities that will meet the unique culture of our military in that era 10 years from now? Is a dilemma I wrestle with every day. So what should we look like? What are the kind of people we need to recruit in our chaplain corps? If it's going to be smaller, more funneled, more directed towards certain aspects of these needs that I just talked about, then what should we have accessioning into our military? And what should they be like in this sense? Well, I'm going to not leave you hanging. I'm going to offer now the way ahead a little bit. And they say in the military, you never offer a commander a problem without a solution or an option. And I'm going to show you where we're going to go toward in this sense. And I'll end with that note. And it'll sound kind of very broad, but it encompasses everything we do. The first thing we got to do is got to be professional in everything we do. I'm not talking, here's what I'm talking about the difference. I thought we are professional, Chaplain Bailey. Answer is not in the way we work like we should. As the military is becoming more business-centric approach and becoming more professional, in a sense, we have to be professional as well inside our chaplain corps. We have to do our business with efficiency, using less resources and more utilizing the great capabilities and gifts and resources we have, maximizing those we have. And that's very broad terms. It's not like I'm CEO of some corporation up here. And that's pretty much the way we're going, that direction we're going, to run business like that. But we cannot be a bunch of individualized faith groups who wear a uniform just by chance doing the same thing. That's not the way you be efficient. That's not the way that you can maximize all your potential and your strength. You've got to be professional in your approach in this sense. The second thing we've got to do is we've got to care for the caregiver. We have to have a program, and we've got this program in the Army side, and the Navy and Air Force I'm talking to, they have similar things working in their lane as well, is we have got to have a program, and we're working that right now to care for you. And this is in with unison with endorsing agencies to help with their own individual faith group people. We as a chaplain corps, as a leader as I am here today, with a burden of that, has got to care for you and not just task you to do something. I've got to resource you. And I'm not talking about with an extra Bible or an extra this. I'm talking about resourcing your spirit, of caring for your soul. We have got to pastor the pastors. We have got to reach out to you and your families and find ways to strengthen you up so you may do God's call, to help you and not just expect things from you in this sense. So the Care for the Caregiver program is a very vibrant and healthy program that we're starting out. I can go in detail about that, but I won't. But just trust me, it is not just words. It's actually a deed behind it. The third thing, we have to grow leaders. We cannot grow individual chaplains, but that's what your faith groups do. And the LDS Church does that for you and makes you proficient in that faith group and understanding the military culture. You place that in, but not all you can stay as captains and lieutenants. You got to get rank. And with rank, pardon the Spider-Man referral, comes great responsibility. I've been asked, and I'll say this as a caveat, I don't have it in my notes, but I've been asked, well, Chaplain Bailey, as a general in the Pentagon, what kind of ministry do you do? I ask that question every morning when I get up sometimes. And the ministry I do is the same what you do. It's just a different environment. Nothing changes. I don't care if you got a 4-star on your shoulders, you still get up in the morning, say goodbye to your wife, and you go in and get beaten up and put away, and you just aren't appreciated very much. And every time you say something wrong, it's in the media. And you're bloodied up and you're hurting by the time you leave the Pentagon. You're a human being. Not a day goes by when I'm in the Pentagon, I do not walk the hallways and reach out and touch the sleeve or the shoulder of a 4-star, 3-star, makes no difference. Secretaries, you name it. And they appreciate it. They have nowhere else to go. Ministry is there. But the other thing that I do as a leader, and I'm getting my point here, is I empower you. I umbrella you to keep things away from you that will distract from your ministries, like someone did for me. My job is to keep those people off your back so you can reach the hearts and minds and the souls of the people you minister to in your unit and wherever God puts you. My job as a leader is to understand the complexity of the nation, of what it's facing, understand where the military is going by the national effort. I have to understand that part. As Chaplain Helms referred to my job, I have to understand where it's going to look like in 2010 and 2035. That's where I'm viewing. I do all that in order to empower you, that your ministry is relevant. Where you're placed is important. Where your capabilities are essential, what you do. And you're given everything you require and need to fulfill that calling. Now, I'm not going to live forever. despite my thoughts. One of you are going to take my place. So how do I get you to be in my place? To understand that kind of world. And that's what I'm talking about. You are some days, and some of you have already arrived there a little closer now, are going to arrive to where you will run and operate and manage a complexity of the chaplain and the religious support of a large area with all kind of faith groups. And you talk about an ice cream shop, the faith group diversity in our ranks is phenomenal. I can't pronounce half the religions that are represented in the chaplain corps. I have to stop and look them up because they're getting so complex, so individualized. But to bring all these chaplains together and try to get them to go the same direction takes leadership. It takes management. It's taking all your complexity and pulling all the efforts together and making it go one direction and be able to have the greatest impact you can. It doesn't mean how much you preach or pray or counsel. It means how you manage and lead others. I have to grow you to do that. I have to teach you how to do that. The endorsing agencies train you to be clergy, to be the basic giver of the good word, of hope. And our job in the chaplain corps is to help bring you up through the ranks and be able to manage the complexity of leading leaders, which takes a great art to do. And so we have to get better at that. The fourth is we have to get better in order to communicate, both inwardly within our chaplain corps and externally back into our military. Now, let me define that a little bit for you. It's no longer in which we can just say, go do good stuff and don't screw up. It takes a little more than that. It's our strategy to be able to say, how can we communicate better with you and wherever you are and all the contemporary mechanisms of technology and be able to give you all the resources you can through those means. How can we better dialogue with you? How can we better talk with you and find out how you're doing and what your ideas are that will shape religious support for the whole military? It's not just individualized going out and you have a great idea. How do you get that great idea to me? What's the mechanism to get it to me? And God has spoken to you. You've got a great idea. It will change the world. But where do you go with it? That's what I'm talking about. Within each one of the services, and I'll talk about the Army specifically here, we have websites. We have iPod distributional stuff. We have videos online. We have all kind of programs out there that we place on this page and it's for everybody to take. Now, I didn't have that when I grew up in the chaplain corps. It's who you know down the street that had a good idea, if he or she was willing to share. And a lot of times they didn't. Now it is open. So how can you do better at that? And I say that because if we use that mechanism internally, then it's our way of saying, how can we reach that individual military person or that family in the world through their mechanisms of communicating? Facebook, Twitter, you name it. How can we talk to them on their level? How can I talk to a 22-year-old family and where they are listening at? Let me just underline something here. The vast, vast majority, the last time we checked, like 98% of the military will never go to a chapel. So here's my challenge to you. So what are you going to do? How are you going to reach them? How are you going to communicate with them? How are they going to hear the good word? How are they going to hear hope if they never come to you and they never enter a worship environment? 98%. Do you sit in our chapel and say, well, they're wrong, they'll come? It's up to God to get them to me? No, it's our job to go to them. So how do we do that? The next one. What is our plan? We have to look at our legacy programs. We have to look at what we're doing today. What is the same old thing that we always do that we think is just a great thing from our perception, but is not really relevant for the demographics of our military? What programs are we missing we have to do the deep, deep dive analysis of finding out the full demographics of who we work with. I have to work with generals and senior people, civilians. You work with much more subordinate ones many times that I don't deal with. The difference of that demographic of those two are dramatic in what their religious requirements are, of their values of their generation. We have to have a full spectrum, a full, I guess, health-wise, of spiritual nurture and care of all assets of our military. To the generals on down to the private, to the military family who sits in an apartment somewhere outside the gates. What are the programs that's needed? And we're doing that now. Of finding out that maybe this program has just run out of gas, but we don't want to give it up because we really love it. But it's not meeting the need. It's not meeting the need. And then what does our chaplains look like in the sense that we have to have a pluralistic environment? It's not about individual churches who do their thing and try to cooperate with others. It's about an environment in which the 98% never go to chapel, never claim any kind of faith whatsoever. And we've got to be able to have an environment of chaplains who know how to minister to that, in a sense. I like to say, and I borrowed this from somebody, I have no idea who it is, but they say the chaplaincy is in higher mathematics. First of all, you do 100% coverage of your faith inside the military or inside your institution. 100% you cover the Latter-day Saints. And then we expect you to do 100% coverage on everybody else. That's high math. 200% is a lot to expect from you. But that's exactly what we have to do. There is no balance. There is nothing else. It is full engagement. We expect you to be able to deal with anybody of any faith or non-faith to ensure that they have their religious needs met. That is mandated. There's no option. So how do you do that? How do we train you for that kind of thing and that kind of ministry? It's a challenge, but we're doing it. And the chaplains that are coming in now are such varied themselves of different educational processes, different experiences, and different faith groups that I've never heard of that are coming in. Currently right now, we have the atheists and agnostic and free thinkers who are asking to have a chaplain on active duty. The Navy has already engaged them already once and have turned down one individual because they were not meet qualifications. They got hit hard by the media on that one. And now they're knocking at the door for the other services. They want to have a chaplain, an atheist chaplain. Now, that's not our judgment. That's our nation, that's our Congress who judges that, not us. We advise them, but they make the decision. If they want an atheist chaplain, we have no choice. It's not democracy. We will have an atheist chaplain. So how would you work with an atheist chaplain? It's a different world than when I grew up in it. A pluralistic, broad perspective of meeting everybody's religious needs. And we have just the other day, I'll mention another caveat here. In my office, the heathens and, what do they call themselves? Heathens and something. Pagans met in my office about how we can care for them. One was from the Vikings Norse gods, was the speaker of it. And he wanted to know what they can do to be able to meet their requirements. Now that's a different era than I'm used to. First of all, they ate all my candy in my office. That made me really upset. And that's a side note. And didn't leave anything behind. But they came in and sat down. But what I saw as I observed them was they didn't come to make trouble. They came as young people who came in who are looking for their needs of their spiritual journey met, their faith formation met. They came in asking for support, not judgment. That's the kind of world we live in today. If anybody has a cutting edge, anybody has the resources, it's us. to meet that complexity. That's the professional I'm talking about. That's the culture of the military that is so unique than anywhere else outside these doors. It's the military or unique institution that you come from that no one else lives like. Our civilian counterparts do not understand our world. So we have to be professional. We have to be experts at it. We have to be good at what we do and learn to work and to play and to understand and respect every faith out there, because that is our culture. And ensure that their needs are met as well as our own personal faith tenets as we share that as well, in a sense. And the last thing, that's the biggest lie a preacher ever says, and finally, but I'll say it anyway. How can we ensure the chaplain corps is the highest of quality as everything changes, that we do not lose our edge? We do not lose the greatness of who we are, the legacy of the sacrifices of those who went before us. That when we change and transform, when we get better at what we do, that we still stay the top quality of religious support that's demanded by our people. It's not about our faith. It's about the command, the army, the nation who requires us and asks us to come on board to deliver it for them. And that is our mission. Resourced, strong, the deepest faith, the passion that won't quit. That's what we're all about. Every month, I go to Fort Leavenworth for the Army side. We have brand new brigade and battalion commanders who are being trained to be commanders and command sergeant majors. And I have to brief them for an hour. You want a tough crowd? Be with my shoes. For 50 minutes, you've got to mesmerize them. And these are all prima donnas. But here's what I close with them. I'm going to tell you what I say to them. I think you can take this across all the services. When I finish my brief, they have some questions, and I finish up. I look out at them. I'm going to say one last thing to you. You will go nowhere. You'll be in any circumstance. We will not have a chaplain by your side. Under any circumstance that you are under stress as a commander, as a leader, and your families are back home, wherever you and your family are, we will have a chaplain by your side. That is our promise. That's our covenant. That's our vow of what we're all about as a chaplain corps. And when I say that, there's a stunned silence every time. And I just quietly say, God bless you, praying for you. And I walk out. When I go to the back, and I go on break normally after when I talk, I'm surrounded by them in the hallway. Sometimes there's tears in their eyes. The spouses come up to me and grab my hand and thank me, because they realize that we as the chaplains have a dedication and a passion of who we are. They will never allow our people in harm's way or wherever they go to not hear the word of God, of hope, the sacredness of life, the joy of life, and everything goes with it within the promises of Christ. We will be there no matter what. That's what we're about. And when you give that promise across and you put your professionalism, you put your strength behind it, you pull your teamwork behind it, and all the resources of all the great gifts that are right here in this room, and pull it all together, what kind of power do you have under God's care to deliver the Word of God? It is phenomenal. It is phenomenal. Well, once again, thank you for allowing me to be here. I got a little passionate. I apologize a little bit. I stopped with the offering. I didn't do any offering. But I'll end with this statement once again. And once again, and thank you for allowing me to come. But I want you to encourage you. If there's ever any time that our nation needs us, is now. If there's ever any time our military needs us, is now. To pull together to be together, to have a common mission, a common destiny, to bring hope, to bring God's love to the people, is to work together. And don't lose your passion. Don't lose your passion. Your calling is what drives you. And balance your life. Those individuals sitting beside you who are not in uniform, God's put in your care. Love them and care for them. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord bless the Latter-day Saints Church and its mission to glorify God.